Welcome to our meeting of January 10th, 2023. People that are listening at home, if you can please let me know tomorrow if you can actually hear us and we don't sound like we're from some other planet and you can actually see us. It would be nice. We're still working on this system, so it's new. So please bear with us, as I've said since the beginning, but we are getting closer. We would like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that we are gathered on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Inklakatma and the SILGA people. And we will move on to late items. Seeing none. Do we have any public input, Mr. Lamas? None whatsoever. 4.1, adoption of minutes. Regular council meeting minutes, December 13th, 2022. Seconder. Any errors or omissions that anybody noticed? All those in favor? Opposed? Done. Public hearing, nothing. General matters, delegations and recognitions. Tonight we have Ms. Sherry Peters from Samaritan's Purse, also our fire chief, our fire department chaplain, and roving ESS volunteer on occasion. To make a presentation. Sherry, the floor is yours. Oh, you're not Sherry. Okay.
Oh, it is on. Perfect. Yeah, no, I'm Sherry's colleague, Megan Blackmore. And so I just want to say a quick thank you to Mayor Gitz and Council for your time this evening. As I said, I'm Megan Blackmore. Sherry Pierce is my colleague, and we are recovery specialists with Samaritan's Purse. I also want to introduce you to our National Recovery Manager, Maurice Potter, who I think is just going to say hello.
I just want to say hi, and it's great being here to serve your community and work with the agencies and work with you in moving the recovery process forward. So it's great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much for everything you're doing.
Perfect. So if we could just move on to the next slide. And I'm just going to quickly touch on our role as recovery specialists here in Merritt. And so to best define our role, it's important to talk about our mission statement as a company. So Samaritan's Purse is a non-denominational evangelical Christian organization providing spiritual and physical help to hurting people around the world impacted by poverty, war, famine, disease, and natural disasters, as this town knows very well. As recovery specialists, we bring with us many years of trusted knowledge and experience in both national and international disaster relief and disaster recovery. For Sherry and I, our focus is on recovery, mainly the long-term community capacity and resilience building. And this is something that we have been developing as a company for about 10 years now. Our role as recovery specialists is to encourage healing to a point where a person is self-reliant and functioning well. Rather than having them wait for help, we want to empower them to help themselves and each other. We also work with churches to determine the resources they have access to during and after a disaster. We also offer trauma-informed assistance to vulnerable individuals through emotional, spiritual, and physical care, so folks don't needlessly fall through the cracks. And our recovery for us is community-focused and individually supported. On the next slide, I'm just going to quickly go over our experience in the last 10-ish years. So in 2007, we really started doing long-term recovery work in Terrace, BC with the flooding. We learned there that everybody wants to help their neighbor, but not everybody knows how to. And so this is where we connect people back to the local church. We learned that if connecting them back there usually allows them to figure out what jobs they do well in and how they can help. We also learned that if we overtake the process of local capacity building, we can't do that. We have to bolster it, and we have to really encourage those local volunteer organizations and groups to really take ownership of this recovery. This helps to restore community's courage, strength, and hope. Next are the Southern Alberta floods, which was catastrophic flooding in 2013 due to the melting snowpack and huge amounts of rain. We learned that you cannot rebuild homes with volunteers as they don't always have the skill sets required, and there is a legal liability there. And we learned that people's needs are more complex than just housing. There's many pillars surrounding a person's well-being, and just building a home only solves maybe one of those, which is the physical pillar. We also learned to partner with helping agencies rather than coming in and taking over, which means that we have a huge network with other NGOs across Canada that we can access and bring to help in Merritt. The Fort Mac wildfires, also known as the Beast, was where we had about over 2,000 homes and structures burned down. So while other organizations focused on rebuilding homes, we focused on case management, interagency collaboration, and working with local churches, which resulted in local churches being more involved in their community recovery and gave the opportunity for increased community capacity building. Lastly, Fort Vermilion, which was flooding there. So we continue to build on these principles that we learned in Fort Mac, which is collaboration, connection, community, but also offering psychological first aid and support to residents. And currently, Sherry and I are operating in Princeton, Merritt, and Lytton, along with some odd cases in Monty Lake. On the next slide, some of you may have seen this graph. This is essentially an emotional recovery journey following a disaster. And so there's a few highlighted parts on the graph that are in bold, and these are just some of the predictable points that we've seen across many different communities after they're recovering from a disaster. If you click again, we've currently passed the 1-year anniversary, and so the Thank Your Neighbor Day was an incredible event of just acknowledging that anniversary, allowing people that time to come to terms with their grief, as usually around this time, people are starting to realize that they are grieving the loss of the past, present, and future through the loss of their homes, just how it impacted their lives, and many other things. It is in our experience that a good deal of the actual long-term recovery happens after this 1-year anniversary event. And like I said, psychosocial recovery trajectories form a somewhat predictable pattern that can be anticipated and prepared for, such as sensory triggers, such as wind and rain, which I'm sure many of you either experienced or saw people experience during the winter months when we had that huge rainfall here in Merritt. Along with that, the anniversary can be a trigger, but like I said, the Thank Your Neighbor event did an incredible job of handling that and doing it in a very respectful way. There's also an increased rates of substance abuse, domestic violence, suicide, and intense family relationships also seem to increase at a somewhat predictable rate. Along with this, counseling care severity and case complexity tend to also increase 1, 2, and 3 years after a natural disaster. And so now I'm just going to pass it on to Sherry, and she's going to just talk to you about some lessons that we've learned over the years.
Thanks, Megan. Good evening. I'm just going to continue sharing what Samaritan's Purse has learned through the disaster response over the several years in approaching. So number one, and I think this is not something new to anybody who's here in the room, but recovery often takes way longer than most people anticipate it to do. In fact, we're talking to people now who are reaching the 1-year anniversary. They often say to us, I really thought I was going to be further than this. And you see it in their eyes, the frustration. We're there to help mitigate that and walk alongside them. We know that there are no set timelines for recovery, and there's no returning to the pre-disaster normal. In fact, change is irreversible, but it's not insurmountable. So we do this together. Many I had no coffee first, I'm just going to tell you. So this is what it's like without coffee. Can you imagine? So many communities take up to even 10 years, to completely adjust after a natural disaster. So thinking on that, even as a Merritt resident, seems daunting to me, but it takes a long time to get there. We do it in pieces. We've also learned that long-term recovery is more involving a sense of community rather than simply rebuilding homes. I know it seems like the most natural thing. Let's just put a roof over their head. Let's just keep them safe and warm. But there's more to recovery. We've learned that repairing and rebuilding houses can sometimes give a mistakenly erroneous proxy measure for what emotional recovery looks like, simply because as people begin to re-enter their repaired or rebuilt homes, they're often facing another juncture in their recovery, which is the psycho-emotional phase in recognizing that's not the home I had before. There's a lot of emotion and processing that goes on with that, and we're aware of this. Samaritan's Purse echoes this learning in a lot of their their disaster recovery literature as well. And I want to spend just a few minutes talking about the third point, which is essential to recovery, is that the community, if it's going to do long-term recovery, must own their recovery. You might wonder what I'm talking about when I mention this, but Samaritan's Purse has come to realize that oftentimes when large external organizations come into town offering assistance, and we're grateful that they do, sometimes they can unknowingly overwhelm or bypass the capacities of local organizations, and it leads them to a sense of frustration and this undetermined sense of where's my ownership in this process. So rather than helping them engage a strengthening in recovery, unknowingly sometimes that can also lead to a hurting that they're not feeling like they own it, somebody's doing for them. Then we talk about professional helps as well. I'm so grateful for all the professional organizations that we get to work alongside, and Merritt has benefited because of it. But Samaritan's Purse has also learned that while it's important, it's also easy to forget or even undervalue the tremendous non-professional resources that we have in a community. Let me, for example, mention volunteer organizations. Fabulous resource. So our local volunteer organizations help people to connect with each other, to share their stories, and to rebuild that sense of belonging, which we know is really important in preventing trauma from developing into long-term mental health issues. So we're really grateful for that. And the beauty of owning recovery as a community is because we as community members have insights into the unmet needs of our community, far different than an external community would or external organization. And we can also help identify any barriers to professional help, which will also aid the community in recovery. So we'll just keep going. A few more lessons learned. See, I didn't even know I was learning all this, but I'm learning so much. Samaritan's Purse has also learned that we can't underestimate the effects of evacuation. And I can tell you from personal experience, it's very jarring to be told in an instant you have to leave everything and go. So whether or not you come back to a home that's flood affected, you can't underestimate how it affects the entire community with regard to mental wellness and how they approach their recovery as well. Disasters can often lead to stirring of new and unanticipated needs that were not known to existing helping networks prior to. For example, in the process of recovery, we're even learning, Megan and myself, that there are certain vulnerable populations that seem to be more prevalent now that we're working through the process that maybe prior to you didn't see as readily. For example, seniors or low-income residents. And there will be other vulnerable areas of the population that will become more apparent because before the disaster, maybe they weren't on the radar. Now we're going to start seeing. So the community will recognize greater needs. Those that were vulnerable before the disaster are even far more vulnerable after the disaster. So Samaritan's Purse has also recognized that there is a need for more personable assistance with these people. So sometimes for Megan and myself, that means helping to mitigate some of the stress for these folks. Some of them find it hard to work through the recovery, whether it's documents they're filling out or appointments that they're making. So sometimes Megan and I will assist in advocacy and even help them in better decision making so that they feel courage and the ability to continue on in their process. We're just about there. So moving on, we're going to talk about community experience here for just a second. And we can't be Samaritan's Purse without talking about faith communities. Faith communities are a very valuable resource that can be mobilized for community recovery, particularly because they can provide direct services at an instant, such as maybe hosting self-help groups, providing shelter for people short term, or even folks in a congregation might have access to an understanding of operation of larger machinery. And I'm thinking back quickly to the power jacks that we used at Crossroads. If it wasn't for people in that congregation who says, we have a need, oh, by the way, I have power jacks and I know how to use them and I'm going to train you. In an instant, a lot of these congregations have incredible resources that are untapped. Faith communities are key. External disaster agencies, let's just put it this way, we're meant to work ourselves out of a job, and that includes Samaritan's Purse. But the whole purpose of our engagement is so that we can help build community capacity so that individuals can take over the recovery process using whatever we've been helping them with regard to temporarily provided services or external agency helps. Because inevitably we just want the community to find the strength, the ability, and courage to continue forward. We're going to talk about strength-based orientation. Samaritan's Purse does their recovery process based on strengths orientation. So put it plainly, community resilience is not measured by losses alone, but by the ability to overcome adversities. Strengths-based. And this is also true when it comes to individual recovery as well. The more a person feels that they can, the more they will. What you believe you will do, right? And last but not least, of course, the human touch is so essential. We've learned that many of the people who are vulnerable are intensely vulnerable and require a little bit more extra help with regard to their emotional support. Some of them are not emotionally capable to engage the complexity or adversarial compensation system. It's awkward and it's very complicated. And some folks, I will tell you, even with regard to educational process or assets, may not understand the process. And sometimes they'll sit in the back 40 because they're afraid to bother somebody, but they just don't understand and they need somebody to help them. So while we don't fill in forms for them, we'll sit with them and we'll help them understand so that, again, their courage is strengthened in the process. Human touch. Yeah, some individuals need help guiding them in what to say or what to expect when they go into a meeting because they're a little terrified. We help them with that. And the best of all, and I think this is so exciting, I'm so glad Samaritan's Purse does this, is we are not confined to an office space. Linda's giggling because we've been over there at the Recovery Center too, but we have the ability to get into a car, and if it means meeting somebody at a restaurant or even in their home, because that's where they feel safe and comfortable, we can do that too. That's part of our community experience. So we're just about there, folks. You've been such good listeners. We're going to talk lastly about what Samaritan's Purse offers. That's why we're here, to share this with you. First of all, there's a real key benefit in the learned experience that we have that guides the understanding of emerging needs in recovery. Let me put it this way. There are certain milestones within the recovery journey that are predictable, even though every community has their unique footprint. But due to our vast experience in a number of different communities, we've got a plethora of knowledge that we can pull from and apply to our current circumstances, which can be a huge benefit. So if somebody's learned something in their recovery in another community, it's going to benefit Merritt, we'll find it. Another thing that Samaritan's Purse offers is the holistic recovery process. We understand that recovery means the whole individual. It's not just the home. It's not just the finance. In fact, it incorporates your physical, emotional, spiritual, and economic well-being. So we understand that leaving any one of those out is not really full recovery. So our job coming in here with our heart is to try and bring some consistency and wholeness to that. We've only got a few more points, but I'm going to invite my assistant, or my partner, Megan. She does assist me. If you only knew what she does to keep me out of jail. Anyways, Megan's going to finish this.
We work together. Yeah. As Sherry said, we are almost done. Hang in there. So Sherry did such a great job talking about faith communities. The last thing I'm going to emphasize is that the mission of the church is to serve their community, to practically show the love of Christ. And so it's a great resource to tap in and really, really push them for that. They just need to know how they can help, and they will help. Lastly, we are there for individuals that we serve. Sometimes it's forgotten how the ministry of presence is a lot more powerful than people realize. Sometimes people just need a shoulder to cry on, and then that's all they need. And that's a lot of the time what we find. We have a lot of people coming into our office, and they just need to sit there and share their pain so that they don't wear it. And sometimes in the conversations we've had with them, they usually figure out how to solve the problem themselves. So, as the community builds capacity based on their strengths, and individuals grow in hope and courage, and then Merritt can then become more resilient in their long-term recovery. And that is our hope as your recovery specialist and getting you there in that journey. So I just want to thank you again for allowing us to share with you today. And we are available for any questions that you guys might have. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Sherry, Megan, and Maurice, even though Maurice, you didn't say much, but thank you for coming.
I'm here on the support role.
I just want to, if you could give us your hours and your address for anybody that's listening that needs to come and see you, because you do have an open shop.
Yes. So we are located at 2101 Colchena Avenue, also the old barber shop at the Adelphi Hotel. So that's where you can find us. Our hours are Monday afternoon from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. and then Tuesday and Thursdays from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So those are our hours.
Now, the reason why we're not doing Wednesdays is commonly in better weather because we do serve 3 other communities. Sometimes Wednesday's a travel day, but we've left Friday as an on-call day. So if somebody's in dire straits, call. We can be there, but yeah, that's how we've done it.
So I just want to point out that I came to you with an elderly lady that had got a contact with me, and I was concerned because there wasn't sure what was going on.
Right.
And you guys you took it from me, and you went and did your thing, and you reported back. So thank you very much. So there's that also. It's not just the big giant picture; it's also the very small individual picture. So I do thank you for that. Any questions? Any comments? Anyone? Anyone? Oh, Manuel, Councillor Ogan.
Hi, everyone. So I just want to say that I had the opportunity to have a good discussion at the Rotary event last year, and I have seen what you have done. So all the results, all the outcome from your program. So I do appreciate to see those results. And I was wondering, because you have provided a lot of help to this town, so I would like to learn a little bit more about your challenges as an organization. What are those challenges that, if they were away from you, you could be giving more results to the community?
That's a
This
wow.
is a dream question.
Oh my word.
Challenges. Oh my goodness.
And what we're seeing.
And I'll just let you know that Councillor Ogan will deal with all of what you're about to tell us.
That is fantastic to hear.
You know, I don't want to speak for Megan because she probably has a different
That's
perspective.
okay. You for sure can.
No, I can't. No, I can't. I won't. But I've noticed that sometimes it's challenging when we do a lot of interagency collaboration, and we found sometimes it's been a little awkward. Sometimes communication between one organization and another is not easily shared. And we're really grateful. At this point, we've got a really wonderful connect with the Recovery Operations Manager here, and that's going to benefit us in understanding where the community needs the most help and how we can come alongside. So I think one of the challenges is the interdepartmental communication and in maintaining that, I could be wrong.
I definitely echo that. That's, I think, the biggest hurdle we've experienced. But that just comes in time and through relationship building, so.
Thank you. Anyone else? Comments? I'm not seeing any, so thank you very much, ladies. I appreciate it. Thank you, Maurice. Appreciate it. Doing a great job, and always good to know that you're there when we need you. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go have a coffee. ERT. Unfinished business. Seeing none. Bylaws. Seeing none. New business, 9.1, Nicola Watershed Restoration Workshop in-kind request. Ms. Brick, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Mayor and Council, and thank you for the opportunity to present on the Nicola Watershed Restoration Workshop in-kind donation request. The Nicola Watershed Restoration Workshop will bring together Indigenous, federal, provincial, and local governments, private landowners, industry, conservation organizations, academia, and consultants working in the fields of restoration in an effort to build relationships, improve communication, and break down silos to coordinate and align efforts to restore the Nicola watershed through the development of a 2 to 5 year plan that is focused on the protection and restoration of fish populations, water, cultural heritage resources, forest, and the protection of property and infrastructure from flood, wildfire, and other impacts in the Nicola watershed. This initiative impacts the entire Nicola watershed and is of direct benefit to the City of Merritt. The workshop will be held in the Civic Center over a 3-day period from February 28th to March 2nd. The event organizers are the Nuayich and Lower Nicola Indian bands. The in-kind donation would be used for the rental of the West Auditorium, the kitchen facilities, and the equipment for the event. The total cost of the donation is $1,304.13. The city is invited to attend the event and is a member of the Nicola Watershed Restoration Committee and Nicola Watershed Governance Partnership. I just have to say in regards to my report, upon further discussions this afternoon with Finance, it was determined that if Council were to waive the rental fee, the funding would be attributed not to the Council Contingency Fund, nor the category of granting aid or sponsorship funds, but rather to the Flood Recovery Fund. And I'm available to answer any questions you may have in regards to the event, as far as I'm aware of the event.
Thank you, Ms. Brick. I appreciate it. Questions from council? Anyone? Well, I guess we should move it first, sorry. Recommendation that council waive the rental fee for the use of the Civic Center West Auditorium for the Nicola Watershed Restoration Workshop to be held on February 23rd, March 1st, and 2nd, 2023. Seconder? Councillor Egan. Discussion. Councillor Newman.
Just looking for a little clarity on why the decision to move from council contingency fund, which I support, to the flood recovery. I'm just wondering what was the supporting information?
It was part of a discussion that we had between myself and finance, and it was just more the appropriateness of the fund and the partners that were involved in the whole project, and just where funding should be appropriately pulled from.
Councillor Hogan.
So what could be the balance right now as of today of the flood recovery fund?
The full flood recovery fund, I do not have a balance of the full amount. I don't know finance.
So versus the other fund that we have, the council fund?
A council contingency fund, do you know the amount?
24 million, we just made it. Anyone else? Any questions? Anyone? Seeing no more questions, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 9.2, Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program. Mr. Green, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship, Council. Very similar to what I talked about last time, we're chasing down grants as best we can. So we've identified this Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program and have done a fair bit of work to isolate what projects might be appropriate for it. I trust you've all read the memo and got the basic gist of everything here. We have chosen the grading at the airport sort of as a primary best fit, and also has a lot to do with the resources available to get it ready to apply for in the time that was allotted. A lot of the other stuff would take a fair bit more groundwork to get things moving if required. So we're looking at grading lots that are lease lots and some of the other land up there so it can be better utilized and get it ready for other uses and marketable. The portion of the program that we're interested in, and it could have come in two different parts. One would have been the economic diversification ED part, which would be 80% of eligible costs, or the forest impact transition, which is 100% up to $500,000, and that's one we've applied for and tried to wedge this into. So we're looking for a motion tonight to go with the application to support it, so we can carry on and hopefully get some money.
Got to read it first. So the recommendation is that council direct staff to apply to the Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program Forest Impact Transition for funding to support an earthwork grading project available airport development lease lands with costs totaling $519,997.50, excluding GST, comprised of the maximum Merritt fund amount of $500,000 and a municipality funded amount of $19,997.50, and that any project cost overages be paid by the city. Moved by Councillor Egan. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Etchart. Questions, please. Anyone? Oh, Councillor. Councillor Charney. Hit your button, Councillor Charney. There we go. Hold on. Yeah.
There.
You're on.
You have not applied for this yet?
Actually, I believe the paperwork did go in on the application deadline.
Okay, because that's what I was going to say, that it had to be submitted by January 4th.
Correct.
So you have already applied for it?
Yes.
Okay, and okay, I'm just clarifying that, and so now we're saying yes to the application.
Yes.
Okay.
Welcome to politics.
If it goes the other way, I'm sure we can pull it. So.
It's just checking.
Yeah.
Can I get everybody to shut their mics off for just 1 second, because we're getting feedback like crazy? Thank you. I'll go to this side of the room. Councillor Etchart.
My only question on the grooming work would be, do we have any interest right now of people that may want to lease that? Has there been much interest? I mean, it seems like a good project to try and market the airport, but I'm just wondering if there's been any interest that you're aware of.
Unfortunately, I'm not 100% aware. I've heard a lot of conversation myself. I know Marilyn's been quite a bit involved in contacts with people that, and she has brought this to us quite a bit. I'm not sure if y'all have any more information on that, but there's been a fair bit of conversation around what's holding back the use of these lease lots at the very least. And that's what we're targeting with this. Marilyn, unfortunately, might have some more information which we can follow up for you if you like at a later date.
Thanks. And if they do have any answers back, would we end up having to put that in this year's budget, or?
Yes, what I would do right now as I'm building my working budget anyways, is I would take the amount that I've got over the $500,000 that the grant allows for, I would put that in the budget. And then if we're successful, then we would have to push forward with the project and see where it lands. The goal would be not to have to spend the overage. It is within the contingency amount that pushed us over the funding.
Yeah.
Ideally, we target a project that's just under.
That would be great. Thanks.
So as somebody who hangs out at the airport ashamedly way too much, right now the properties that we're looking at to level are virtually impossible to rent at this point in time or sell or do anything with, because it's a wave. If you look at the map that you were given over on the one corner where the triangle is, that is going to be knocked down for future helicopter action when we have fires, because right now we have nowhere for these helicopters to park and they're too close together. At any time during the fire season, we're ending up between 14 and 25 helicopters up there, some medium, some heavies, and they're getting far too close to each other. Somebody's going to get hurt up there. So that's one of the other reasons why there's that triangle up at the top towards the north. And at this point in time, I think the airport has sat stagnant for far too long, 16 years since we put these lots out. And it's time to do something with them where they're achievable. And I'm quite sure that once, and I'm sure Marilyn could probably bob her head up and down, that I'm sure that we will have a fair amount of people looking at these lots because they're already serviced. We just have to get them usable. Yes, and it's free money. Anyone else? Councillor Newman, push your button. Oh, Councillor Hogan, sorry.
So just to understand this, there were two streams. You had already submitted your application. So one of those streams was for the economic development, economic diversification, actually. So I'm hoping that in the future, Maryland, we will see shelf-ready projects that we will include the 1 million, which we cannot, meet right now, that requirement, the 1 million range, but in the future to have something ready to take advantage of these opportunities. So going back to the question regarding, yes, I am in favor of submitting this application. So whether or not I'm in favor of the project, I don't know. So as the report mentions, so there were other projects considered, the compost facility, the city clay banks, RV parks improvement, the light industrial park planning, downtown streetscape project, the airport improvement. So once, Mr. Green, once I review these projects, personally, I would like to see a comparative revenue analysis so that it will tell me that this is the right project that we need to submit versus the other projects. So I'm going to trust in your recommendation right now, and I will go in favor. But again, in the future, I would like to see that report. Thank you.
Councillor Newman.
I think Councillor Olguin just took a lot of the verbiage out of my mouth that I was thinking the same. And also just one set of words on here that I'm not 100% comfortable with, and it's just simply the line, and I don't know whether we'd need a friendly amendment or not, is that that any project cost overages be paid by the city. I don't like a free-for-all to assume that we would cover all overages, even though we may be in fact on the hook. I would be definitely wanting to see that project come back to council for approval on an overage instead of just the blatant go ahead and complete the project without any follow-up on that. Just a comment. Thank you.
Anyone else? You wish it? Oh. Mr. Lawes.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to, well, all of you and all of Council. I did just want to address a couple of issues that have come up from the staff side and note that essentially we often get ability to file applications with grants on relatively short notice with short deadlines. We discover that it exists a very short time before the grant deadline is required. And essentially the funders know this. This is why it's often, but not always, the case that the submission deadline explicitly notes the application has to be in by this point, the supporting resolution has to be in by this point. So they do know, they do acknowledge that often there are very short timelines involved, and that there isn't as much lead time as we would like. Historically, Merritt hasn't done particularly well until the last few years in grant funding. I think the last council actually looked on in horror at Samaritan, I think was the comparator they used, which got dramatically more money than we did. And so Merritt then began actively seeking out many more grant opportunities, although this has resulted in in many projects being able to be done, many grant applications going in, being submitted, which has resulted in a lot of cash coming Merritt's way. That does, of course, ultimately mean that we're often then coming to council and providing you with, this is what we, as staff, we thought the best opportunity was in the time that we had available with the what we could put together in the time with what we had shelf ready. We're looking to get free money. Do you endorse this or not? And if you ever refuse to supply the resolution, that's it. The resolution, it would need to go in. So the bid, even if we had already submitted it, you're not beholden to it. You can vote it down and essentially reject it yourselves when it comes to council. This is why we bring it to you. The second line in there, that any project cost overages be paid by the city, and also that is very common, combined with the municipality funded amount of, in this case, $19,997.50. It's normally a grant requirement that the resolution commits to the council to paying both our portion of it if it is not 100% funded, and also any overages. But again, we would always want to make sure that you were fully informed, and if for whatever reason there was a overage that was happening, we never want you to be blindsided by that. We always want to make sure we're providing as much information as we can, making it transparent. That said, I know it must feel uncomfortable saying there's the possibility that we're asking you to endorse an unknown spending. Unfortunately, that is often at times part of the requirement in order to put the grant in the first place. And so that would form part of the matrix of, do you want to support the application or not? Knowing that oftentimes municipalities that are awarded money for whatever reason are unable to complete the project in question. And so even just because we get the money doesn't necessarily mean that it will go ahead. You do always retain control as the governing body and can tell us to nix things as you see fit.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Hogan?
Okay, so thank you. It's always good to have to know that there is that flexibility, and I feel like you guys have also the flexibility with us. So I'm not sure if there is a need of dealing with a meeting in a time notice that we have that availability to handle that one as well. And I'm not sure, and I don't know if there are items that we can deal with via email. So I don't know that part, but I mean, if that's an option, I would like to know.
Mr. Laws.
Through your wish to council, I'll go in as a general rule. If it's a decision that needs to be made by council, it would need to be in a properly constituted meeting with you. Meetings can take place virtually, but as a general rule, we can't just send out an email and say, do you endorse this or not? If a resolution is required with a vote in favor, it does need to be a properly constituted meeting with agendas, minutes, public accessibility, etc.
Thank you. Mr. Green?
If I may also to clarify, the information regarding the project, the general idea is at this level, we've done what I call a Class D estimate, which is largely a desktop exercise after I've been around the site and done some general estimating on my own. It still has to go through design, detailed design, and obviously tendering or what other methods, and we would tailor the project after the initial detailed design estimate. If it comes in higher or lower, we'll tailor the project to the money that we have. So I don't think there's a lot of risk that we're going to throw $1 million project at you or anything like that. The goal here is to use what we have and tailor it, but since we don't have that level of detail built into it yet, we had like 3 days from the time I got a hold of this thing to crunch together an estimate and make this go. So that detail will come later and it'll be sized appropriately, and you have the ultimate word on it regardless.
Thank you. Councillor Newman.
Again, just following up on the previous comments, there are ways that we can definitely in policy do telephone polls in regards to this, and information be provided via email for at least electronic consideration, and then either a telephone poll going forward. And if that is not a policy, I would definitely like to make sure that that is instituted, because in situations much like this, we are all available on our computers or telephones to get the information, to at least review 2 or 3 projects, or any information that can be provided to council, because with not only grant funding, yes, it's free money, as we like to say, with a $20,000 price tag, but it also predetermines council's vision and what projects we think are a priority, or possibly that of staff, right? So it's just definitely, I think it's a discussion that we have to have around the table. And I think, as I said, going forward, if there's no policy in regards to telephone polls for short notice things, I would like to see that brought forward at the future date.
Thank you. Anyone else? All those in favor? Oh, did we move it?
Yes.
We did. All those in favor? Oh,
Well, I just had my...
oh, sorry. Councillor.
One thing that I just wanted to add to the comments was that it's unfortunate we didn't have a lot of notice, but it's nice that we're actually applying for things where years ago we didn't apply for enough and we didn't get any grants. We didn't get to do Vote Street because we didn't get the grant funding on it, and then the flood happened. So a lot of the funds that we did have in reserve had to go to other things. So this is a nice opportunity to take advantage of those lands which are underutilized, which Mayor Getz had mentioned earlier. And so, I mean, I know it's $20,000 and we didn't have a lot of time, but I'm also appreciative that the staff took the initiative to apply for something like this, because seeing 100% funding up to $500,000 is, well, over the grants I've seen in the last few years, I think that's probably one of the more generous ones. So thank you for that anyway.
And I will make a comment to Councillor Ogan and Councillor Newman. I agree as well, having it, keeping our eye on it, and I'll wear my shame here with the lacrosse box. That's something that got totally away on council, and it went to $500,000 mistake. So got bit by that, and so I do agree that we do need to keep a sharp eye on that, because once it catches you, it's embarrassing. So any other questions for anyone? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Green. Appreciate it. And yes, and thank you for getting on that 3 days notice. Appreciate it. 9.3, 2003 SILGA resolutions. Mr. Lawis, this is you.
Thank you, Your Worship. And this is honestly one of the more nebulous reports that comes to you, as you have very little in terms of staff recommendations and very large amounts of freedom what to do, and about, I want to say, 3 meetings, including this one, to figure it out. So basically, any input or ideas or suggestion you have, then of course you can discuss amongst yourselves, but also staff are available and very happy to help you come up with what it is that you want to do. So essentially on this, every year the SILGA conference takes place, the Southern Interior Local Government Association. This year it is in Vernon. And at that conference, the municipal government, I've made this mistake before, not just the municipal governments, all local governments, including the regional districts of the Southern Interior, get together and discuss regional issues that affect more than just a single local government. There's all kinds of things that happen at the conference, but one of the big things is resolutions. And we have the opportunity to put forward ideas, suggestions, comments that affect more wider issues than simply Merritt, and then look for support from our friends and in other local governments. The last couple of years, we've managed to get some resolutions endorsed by SILGA and then passed on up to UBCM, where they became official policy of all local governments across British Columbia. That was relating to asking for provincial involvement, so asking the provinces to involve local governments more in setting the standards for snow clearing, because we're very familiar with the unfortunate situation on Nicola Avenue where it is a Ministry of Transportation maintained road, but obviously council and the city take a lot of flack when every year it is not cleared to the standards that we expect. That's on a 25-year maintenance contract with the province, so there's very little we can do about it. But what we have done is made it policy of all local governments in BC to ask the provincial government to involve us more when we're setting future standards when those contracts next come up. It might not be much, but it is something. It is a step in the right direction. Similarly, on snow clearance again, quite appropriate. Maybe it's just the time of year that these resolutions are requested in. We've also asked for the Ministry of Transportation to work with the RCMP to look at creating a framework within which owners of off-road vehicles could use those off-road vehicles to clear snow for their neighbours. At the moment, that's technically unlawful. There are a lot of things that we simply do not see in wintertime because it is extremely helpful as well. And so we have asked, and we've gotten the endorsement of our neighbouring municipalities to say this is something that should be regularised, there should be options. And now, going into the 2023 conference, we're looking for your ideas, your suggestions, what you would like to be policy that you've identified as affecting wider issues than simply Merritt, that are not just Merritt-related issues, but affect local governments and communities across the Southern Interior, across British Columbia. And so this is essentially, this meeting is an opportunity for you to start thinking about what that might be, or to raise any suggestions, maybe have some conversations if you want to, if you have any ideas already. We need to get them in, I think the February 24th meeting, is it February 4th? I put the deadline in the report. It's in February is the meeting that we have to get the endorsement, get our resolutions done by, so that is not something that has to happen at this meeting. I think it is in 2 meetings after this one. So any of those that you want to bring forward, it would be in the format, be it resolved that, and then whatever the idea that you want to get across. So, for example, be it resolved that the provincial government take action on X. Essentially, I will now turn it over to you to see if there are any questions or comments that you have. As I said, staff are very happy and available to help you with any drafting over the next few weeks if you have any ideas. So we are essentially at your disposal for this.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. So the recommendation, technical recommendation, is that council adopt the resolution, be it resolved that, whatever you'd like, and instruct staff to submit this to the SILGA conference. Can I get a mover? Councillor Achert, seconder. Councillor Charney, Councillor Charney. I always want to call you Councillor Wendy, sorry. Questions from anyone? Councillor Newman? I had to go ahead.
Just again, a question of clarity on the motion that's actually on the table, because this report, to my understanding, is just for information. And if we want to put forward a resolution, which I think we have time to discuss, so this is just strictly for information?
Nope, sorry.
At this point, it is essentially up to you, Councillor. If you have anything, say, which is ready at this point, then you are absolutely free to put it forward at this meeting, but you do not have to. There are multiple meetings after this where you can do so. I think we'll put this on the agenda on the next 2 meetings in order to give you the opportunity to bring anything forward or discuss anything if you have any ideas. If anyone already has any ideas that they would like to throw out there, you can absolutely do that tonight, but you are not required to do it tonight.
So basically, we don't need the recommendation. This can just be received.
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah. So I'll pull all that back. So, so if anybody has, just for the councillors that are new, in order for this to get to UBCM, it has to go through SILGA. It's kind of like it's kind of like the yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like the juniors going up to the NHL sort of thing. So, okay, thank you. Moving on. 9.4, 2023 grant and aid application. To be reduced by Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson, you're up. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. The report is in front of you, and the Council Policy 4.01 for Community Grant and Aid is also attached to your report. and it provides for grants and aid to nonprofit and community groups who demonstrate a funding need for a service or program that will benefit the community at large. The current policy sets the amount of the yearly grant and aid as up to $50,000 per year. The applicants looking for $1,500 or less are no longer required to submit financial statements or a budget to encourage applications from smaller organizations and individuals. Due to the volume of paper and size of electronic files, the applications have been filed through a PDF that you got earlier today, put in a hyperlink that didn't work, unfortunately, but it's roughly 171 pages for the PDF that you received earlier today. There's 14 applicants, and if the council funded all the requests, it'd be $47,918, and there would be an amount of roughly $2,081 left over allocated from the 2023 proposed budget. And council may elect to reduce the overall funding for the grant and aid to $47,918, or move all or a portion of the $2,081 remaining to the council contingency fund or another line item on the 2023 financial plan. All applicants have been informed by email of the meeting tonight, and they could be present, but it wasn't a requirement. And they haven't, so that if you have any questions, they have an opportunity to respond to the questions. If not, I can take those questions away and ask them later on this week. Council does have the opportunity to ask any of the representatives if they are present, or council may delay the decision on one or more of the items if more information is requested from an applicant who is not present. Any councillors wishing to recuse themselves from the meeting in order to avoid a conflict of interest on item should declare this intent prior to the motion or the debate. Some of the options and discussion, council may choose to approve the 2023 grant and aid funding of $47,918 and move all or a portion of the remaining balance of $2,081 to the council contingency fund or another line item in the 2023 financial plan. Or they may request to increase or decrease one or more of the 2023 grant approval amounts while staying within the $50,000 grant and aid 2023 budget allocation, with all or a portion of the remaining balance moved to the council contingency fund or another line item in the 2023 financial plan. Or council may request to increase or decrease the available 2023 grant and aid budget of $50,000. In the 2023 proposed financial plan, we have $50,000 allocated to grant and aid requests, and as per the policy, council will review the grant and aid submissions and allocate funds at their discretion within the set budget amount. And council should make a final decision on the approved grants and aid by March 1st of each year. Council may provide the following direction for distribution of financial aid to successful applicants in advance at the discretion of council, 50% at the time of approval and 50% upon receipt of the final reporting, or at another time as specified by council during the approving process. At council's direction in 2020, sponsorships have been removed from the grant and aid process and are considered at a separate meeting after the grant and aid. And to date, the city has not received any sponsorship requests for 2023. This category had a budget of $15,000 in previous plans, and this can be revisited for the 2023 process or amended by council during the financial plan approval process. In addition to the 14 applicants that you have on your spreadsheet, another 2 have come in that are considered extraordinary grant and aid, and they'll be considered at a future meeting. And for your information, those 2 are the Nicola Valley Skating Club, requesting $840, and the Nicola Valley Farmers Market Association requesting $1,100.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. So I'll just read the recommendation so we can get it on the floor. That council approve the 2023 grant and aid request listed in the attached Schedule A in the type, amounts, and payment timing indicated on the spreadsheet. And recommendation that council move any remaining funds in the grant and aid provision of the 2023 draft budget to council contingency to provide funding for other requests that may come up during the year. Do I move it? No. See no mover. Yes. Move it to get on. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Etchart, Councillor Ogun, first, second. On the table, any questions from council? Councillor Etchart.
I like the list that we have here. There's detail. The only problem is I think that a lot of us have questions on the amounts and wanted to look over more the detail that the link didn't have until today. So I feel comfortable with a lot of the information that's there, but I don't speak for the group. And so I feel very comfortable from what I've looked at quickly today, but I think that a lot of people have their comments and want to look over some of it. We're less than the 50, but I think some people have some questions and might want to mull it over a little bit and feel a little bit rushed. That's the only comment I have. Thanks.
So just to let you know, this is a different process than what I'm used to. This was usually our first night of budget when we would do this. And I have to agree that we did not get the particulars because the hyperlink didn't work, so a lot of us have no idea what some of the, and there's a couple here that stand out for me that I would have to red flag even if we moved forward, because I have questions that need to be answered on those. So myself, I don't want to use the dreaded D word here, but I would like it to possibly be moved and decisions made on the next meeting after we've had time to look at it, because like I say, I have a couple, and that's just me, and I'll let the rest of council have their say. And Mr. Lawes.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to confirm that, as Mr. Thompson mentioned, as is in the policy, final decisions should be made under the current policy by March 1st each year. We are only in early January at this point, so it would be entirely proper for you to have any discussions that you want today, to ask questions of people who are here. I know there are some of the applicants who are in the public gallery tonight who might wish to provide you, say, initial information. If you wanted to essentially move straight on to other items and have this come back at the next agenda when you've had a chance to read it more, then you could do that. You could also take the information which is available to you from the people currently in the agenda in the gallery, but then also decide, say, that you're not comfortable taking any decisions tonight. We have plenty of time in hand for that to be done. So yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Lawes. We'll let the rest of council have their say and see what they have to say. So thank you very much. Anyone else? Councillor Newman.
Just a quick question. Why would those last two applicants be considered extraordinary? I'm just looking for clarification on that.
Sorry.
It's because of the policy, anyone that submits after the deadline, it's an extraordinary grant and aid is according to the policy.
Thank you. Just want clarification on that.
Thank you.
And can I just add to that? Last year when we had the applicants, we had 17 applicants on time, and then there was another 7 that came throughout the year. So they will come throughout the year. And so I think the last one we had was in October or November this year. So it does create that. And so it's just that distinction between that initial go at it with the applicants and with the deadline. So.
Thank you. Councillor Egan.
I would like more information on what the Small Scale Meat Producers Association does for $10,000, and they want 3/4 of their budget from us. Is there anybody here from that group?
They're requesting $7,500. Oh, so we don't have to have council. We can ask these people right from the. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Please come forward, state your name, and let us know. Push that button, and I'll push mine. There you go.
Did it work?
Yes, you were ready.
There we go. My name's Julia Smith. I'm the Executive Director of the Small Scale Meat Producers Association and a local farmer and rancher. And I would be happy to answer any questions about this project. The total project budget is actually $2.2 million. The $10,000 is just for this community consultation portion of the project. We are building a licensed inspected abattoir in partnership with the Coldwater Indian Band. And so as part of the planning process, we will be holding community consultations with local retailers, consumers, residents, ranchers, farmers, any stakeholders with an interest in this project to ensure that we're planning properly for operations and just answering any questions that anybody might have about the project. I understand you probably haven't had a lot of time to look at all of the materials, but some of you are already familiar with this project, and the support that we have had from this community has been quite overwhelming and heartening. So yeah, that's kind of a quick snapshot.
So I still don't understand what's going to do.
Oh, we're going to hold hopefully a community consultation here at the Civic Center and invite all of these various stakeholders in order to get more engagement and more people out. We'd like to make it a bit of a community event as well. So we'd like to have food and some entertainment and, yeah, provide an environment for people to come together, not just to discuss our budget, but to discuss the industry and the opportunity for the community as a whole. And we'd like to provide, local food from local ranches and hire a local caterer to do all of that and not just bring in pizzas.
I have a very quick question. So yeah. The 7,500, I need to know more what that's going to cover, because the building actually can be taken as a in-kind from us without being paid for.
Well, I included that as per the instructions. The building in-kind was included in that 7,500.
Okay.
So I did
so
that
then that would
calculation.
probably come down a bit. Then it would be in the sixes somewhere, I would imagine, right?
And it was included in my application, so you should have.
A grant and aid and in-kind are two completely different things. So that's just, okay, just wondering. Councillor Charney.
So you are a for-profit association?
No, we're a nonprofit.
So your abattoir is going to be a nonprofit?
Yeah. It's going to be co-owned with Coldwater and SSMPA as a nonprofit. And then what we'd like to do, and this will be part of our community consultation, is set up a nonprofit co-op to operate it. And that we want to do that because our greatest Achilles heel in this industry is labor. And we'd like the opportunity to have the workers be in the co-op, and also for the producers, so that the people who are working for the abattoir will benefit from the abattoir. So yeah, no, it's a nonprofit venture.
Anyone else? Thank you, Julie. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
For straightening us out on that.
Yeah, and if anyone has any other questions in the next month or two, don't hesitate to reach out. And I can send you the business plan and the budget for the bigger project if anyone's interested.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do you want me to push the button again?
Yes, please. Okay. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Councillor Charney again.
Mr. Thompson, you mentioned that you had a number of grants come in after the deadline. What was that total amount? Do you have a rough amount?
I think he's talking about in the future as the year moves along.
Yes, but what I'm saying is if we have only 50,000 and we're giving 47,000. Okay, so I was just wondering if we were to keep some in reserve.
Yes.
Yeah.
At one point in time, Councillor Charney, we had grant and aid. We also had city initiative. We had pretty close to the same amount of money in both. And the city initiative was for something where somebody was going to do something in town, fill up the restaurants, the hotels for 2 or 3 days. So because that normally comes to you because somebody decides to do a festival maybe in April and they don't have to. So we've done that before, but not saying that we wouldn't entertain it. We would have to find the funds from somewhere else. So simple.
Okay.
Am I incorrect? No. Okay. I think Councillor Etchart was next.
I also want to mention that for some of the things that we had, we did some of them as sponsorships if they were lower amounts. So I think that even though we know that there's going to be things that come up, or there's an event, or COVID's over and now all of a sudden everybody's planning life again, that we're going to see probably more of that this year. Last year 7, maybe this year 10, but maybe more. But I just think it would be nice, and we can all think about it so we're not rushed. But yeah, that is a good consideration. We're at 47 and the limit's 50, but we have sponsorships as well. But they have, I think in the sponsorships it was limited to 500 per group and 1,500 for an association or something. But it was in the attachments that were there anyway. Thanks.
Councillor Ogan.
Okay, so I just want to address the public to say I'm sorry that we are not, I prefer not to deal with the applications at this time right now. We didn't receive all the information on time, so it was a glitch in the system. So what I have learned so far from being a councillor is that there is need of any area, many areas, and maybe I'm becoming a little frugal, but I want to make sure that every organization receives the right attention by reviewing their own application. So I'm going to be, my promise is to review every application to understand how, what can we do to help you by approving the application, right? So I wish I had all the money to say, okay, yes, all of them are approved. So I just want, in my opinion, I will see what kind of organization is going to have, or project is going to have the most impact, in our community, and I will review those applications, and I would like to review them at the next meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Charney, and then I see you out there with your hand up in the air. Sorry, sir, I don't know your name, so it's fine. Councillor Charney?
I was just wondering if there's anyone here from the Merritt Snowmobile Club.
Hey! Come on up. State your name, sir, when you get there. And push that button so I can key you in. And you're live.
Hey, everybody. Dave Anderson from the Merritt Snowmobile Club.
Thank you, Dave.
I'll take your question first.
Well, I would just like you to, as you know, we haven't read the information, so if you could give us a quick synopsis of the $7,500, because I see you want a webcam and a C-cam.
That's correct.
Okay, could you explain the costs of both of them, et
Yeah,
cetera?
definitely. So when you do get a chance to look through, there's a really long itemized list of all of the costs. It's around a $23,000 project. We're asking for the $7,500 to cover part of that. Basically, what we'd like to do is take a webcam and place it in our honeymoon location, which is really remote. It's about a 40-kilometer ride from the loading area. And so the purpose of that would be for riders to be able to check the conditions before heading to the area through the webcam. And then the part about the C-cam is you have to house all the electronics. It's solar powered, and so that all of that exists inside of the C-cam in that remote area.
And it's all broken down,
Yeah, for sure. Every item, what's in kind, what the club is paying for, and then what we're asking the city to pay for.
Anyone else? Question for Dave? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
I do have a question, though.
Sure.
Just around holding back funds in anticipation of further applications. Why would we then have a deadline for applications?
Well,
and not just leave it and revolve?
I will defer to Mr. Norman.
We have a deadline to get the bulk of the applicants in right now. But throughout the year, things come up and people start planning things. And so they come up and they need some funding. New initiatives, things change. We have floods and wildfires, and so things change throughout the year. So there's an allowance in there that, what do we do if somebody comes to us in September and says, we need to do some recovery work because we just had a wildfire. And so those are the things that we do in the future. So we put in a budget of $50,000. Whether we spend it all now or in the future is up to mayor and council to decide that.
Okay, like wildfire relief would fall under grant and aid?
No, I'm just saying, I'm using it as an example. But people start planning things, and organizations are constantly churning. But as you know, with any organization, there's volunteer work, and it's the volunteers in there that come up and say, we can go after a grant and aid. Let's go after a city to help us because this is something that's going to improve our community. People don't always plan long-term. People get together and talk, we should start a snowmobile club, or we should start a motorbike club, or we should start, what can we do to get that started? And what can we do to facilitate that?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Clear as mud. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other questions? Councillor Hogan? Oh. You're up.
Yep. I just want to assure you that these applications who were submitted on time will have our priority. So there could be other extraordinary applications as mentioned before, but this has our priority. We are going to be dealing with this application first. Whether or not there's going to be funding at the end, so we don't know because we are going to deal with this application first.
Councillor Richard.
To add to the comment about the deadline, was in a perfect world, we would have a draft budget in February, so we'd kind of have an idea of what we have for grant and aid, so that we could have a draft budget approved, so that we can get our big projects done for the year out to RFP early. But being that we're a new council and training and everything, the first year is always a little bit behind maybe, but because we have to have our annual report for June 30th, and then also the other budget approval for mid-May, and anyway, that's why, but things get delayed sometimes. Thanks.
You bet. Councillor Newman.
Just a question of staff. When's the last time there was an increase to the grant and aid budget?
That's before my time. Been that way for, when was the policy done?
To be honest with you, Mr. Thompson, we have been between 47 and 50 since I came in 2008 for 10 years.
Yeah.
So we're 16 years.
So
What happened?
Pardon me, just after, I mean, obviously we're deferring this to a later meeting. I am very interested to hear which groups are left instead of kind of going one at a time through our questions. I'd rather hear from the gallery who's left and be able to gauge if there's questions or if they want an opportunity to speak to council. But possibly as a secondary motion, we might want to consider increasing the grant and aid budget or reviewing it at the very least. If it's been 17 years, I think it's well timed that number's probably a little understated to say the least.
So we do have a motion on the floor to approve this. So I guess I should, do we, caught between a rock and a hard place, do we want to continue to talk about this and piecemeal it, or do we want to get all the information and get it all done in one go? That's what I'm wondering here. I know we have people in the audience that probably feel they would like to be heard. I have a couple of questions. I'm just wondering if there's anybody here from the Mountain Bike Association. Okay. That's one of the ones I had to come. But like I say, we do have a motion on the floor. We have to go ahead and move that motion or defeat it. So if there's no more questions. So
I think it's important to hear from the gallery, those people that took the time to come out tonight.
Let's do it then. So do we want to go through these one by one, and who's ever here will speak? Is that how we want to do this? Is that the flavor? Okay, let's do it. So the first one up is the Merritt Breadbasket Soup Bowl Society. Here we go.
I'm Michael.
I'll get you to push your button there, Michael. There we go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Michael from the Merritt Breadbasket Soup Bowl Society, best known as Soup Bowl. So we run a like a food service soup kitchen mock setup out of St. Michael's Church now for, I think it's over 20 years, 22 years I think it's been going. And over this year, or over the 2022 season, we had over 1,000 people more than the previous year. So it's like we were 4,058 guests, I think, for the total of 2023, or 2022, sorry. Which is quite an increase. Obviously, the flood, we were shut down for about, I think, 4 or 5 weeks last year. cut our numbers a bit, but still it's a pretty dramatic increase. Even today we were open. We've seen about 80 individuals come through, and we see new faces every single week. So we thought if everybody showed up that shows up every week, we'd have over 200 people coming in, which we can accommodate over 100 comfortably, but 200 might be a stretch. So our current system is, the reason the grant is in for the refrigeration and freezer system is we're using standard household fridges and freezers, and it's become really encumbersome to, like chest freezers, stuff gets put to the bottom, rotating it through. So we want to upgrade. After seeing what they did at the food bank, I'm like, it's time to upgrade into the commercial units, which use less power, and you can put a lot more space into them. So that's the main reason for the grant aid, is to cover a portion of it. We have done a new fundraising initiative that started last year with Bench Elementary, where we do their lunch program on Tuesday. So we send soup and a bun up for all the kids, or for the kids that are signed up for it. And that's created a little bit of a revenue stream for us. And the community, of course, we always get a little bit from some of the organizations around. Sometimes they drop off sandwiches. Is there any questions about it?
Any questions? Councillor Hogan?
So should I understand that you have already raised the difference and you are asking for the 2,900 to the city?
So we've just started raising a portion of it. So no, we don't have it all. We have enough. So with the grant aid, the portion, we'll be able to get the first fridge in, which they're about $6,000 to $7,000 per unit. So we're only putting in 2 new units, basically. That's the 14,000 and change for the total budget. So with approval from the grant aid, we'll be able to put the fridge unit in first and get that in right away. And then by the summer, through other initiatives, we should have the rest of it in to get the freezer system done. And then we'd be up to speed, hopefully.
Any other questions? Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Can I get you to push that there button? Thank you very much. Merritt Country Christmas. Well, I don't have to ask for this one. I already know there's somebody here. Mr. Jack Pullmans, push that button.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank the council and the mayor for really participating this year in our festivities. They were there for the parade. They were there for the tree lighting. It was great to see all of you out there. That's my first comment. Secondly, the application is for $4,500.
I was about to turn your mic off there.
3,000 of that is for the rental of the facilities. At one time, we used to have them, they were all paid for, but because of certain extra charges, we went to the grant and aid system. So the balance of the 1,500 is to pay for some insurance that we must carry. We have to carry a $2 million liability for the parade and all that. So the money is there only to just cover our expenses. This year, our donations were down a bit. We did take a loss, but if we get the 4,500, we will certainly be able to carry on again with Merritt Country Christmas, which we definitely need. Everybody really enjoyed it this year, so I hope that you can see your way to help us with the 4,500. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions from us? Just wanted to say thank you to, and Kurt, thank you very much. It was well needed and it was well received and everybody had a great time. So it's something that's become a real mainstay of this community. So thank you for your hard work, the both of you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You bet. Merritt Mountain Bike Association, apparently there's no one here from that, which is unfortunate. And I guess my question would have been increasing safety at the Merritt Dirt Jump Park. That park has broken bone written all over it, so I'm not really sure. I'm just trying to figure out what they would be. I don't know if they're going to bubble wrap stuff or what. I don't know, but I'm curious. Nicola Nordic Ski Club. Anyone here from the ski club? No. Okay. Kennel Club. Yes, ma'am. Please come forward. I'll actually just get you to push that button, and because we are going live here. Okay.
Okay. Sorry, I'm Julie Leslie. I am the secretary of our local Nicola Valley Kennel Club. It is been, I guess, 40 years now in existence. We're working on 41 years this year. So it's, certainly had its time. Obviously, through the wildfires, COVID, and the flooding, That was a struggle for the last few years. We managed to, spur of the moment, put a show on last year with the help of you guys and your grant and aid. And yeah, we managed to use the rodeo grounds, and we would like to do that again. We had a lot of good feedback after last year holding it there. And yeah, so the grant and aid would go to assist us in paying for that and also support another local nonprofit.
Thank you. Any questions, Council? Councilor Rogan?
So I was just wondering about the number of people that you guys are expecting, so if this goes through.
Yeah, generally speaking, I think we get about 300 people, give or take. Last year, yeah, the hotels were booked up. I don't really early on. So there were a lot of people that were camping on the grounds, but yeah, it's about 300 people, and they do go out and about town, and it is open to the community to come in and watch and view, and it's free of charge. And though last year we did fundraise for $5 parking. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Councillor Charney?
So exactly, I mean, are you, this $5,000, is it going for, to pay for the show at the rodeo grounds?
It's basically pays for the rental.
Of the rodeo grounds?
Of the rodeo grounds, yeah.
Okay.
That's mostly.
So that's basically the bulk of the $5,000?
The bulk of it, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'll get you to push your button again there, Councillor Charney. You're still alive there. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Julie. I appreciate your time.
Thanks.
And can I get you to push the button in front of you there? Thank you very much. Nicola Valley Evangelical Free Church. Is there anyone from here? No. Merritt Snowmobile Club, Dave, we've already heard from you, so thank you very much. And Nicola Valley Arts Council? No. Merritt Little Britches Rodeo? No. Nicola Valley Rodeo Association? Peter?
Thank you, Mayor.
I'll just get you to push that button there. Thank you.
You'd think I'd know by now.
No problem.
So the application before you is consistent with a major improvement project we've been carrying on for about the last 2 or 3 years, the grounds. Some of you may remember who were here 2 or 3 years ago that I appeared to seek a grant to help us develop a long-term project, a long-term planning system for the grounds and how we could better use the grounds, how we could be more effective in using them more than just for rodeo, but for other events. You've heard about the Kennel Club. I didn't think we charged $5,000 for that, but in any event, one of the aspects that we've been looking at is the accessibility for people with mobile issues. Those that are using walkers, canes, wheelchairs, and so on. And unfortunately, when the grounds were initially developed many years ago, there wasn't a lot of thought given to that. This past year, for the Pro Rodeo as an example, we created something like 25 parking spaces for people with mobile issues. And we filled those and still had to have people dropping them off at our interior gate where the ticket booth was. So we've got a lot of people in the community and those coming into the community for events like this. The Pro Rodeo, I guess, is the biggest, as you probably know, but we've had several large events like the Canadian High School Rodeo in the past, and even things like the Elvis Festival last year and other events where people that come in aren't always as mobile as some of us. And we had one incident last fall that I was aware of that where one of our members actually tripped on the gravel. Now, if you're familiar with the rodeo grounds, you'll remember that between the main grandstand and the entry area is a concourse, and it's largely gravel. There's a small area that's maybe the length of this room, perhaps a little bit longer, that's paved, but the rest of it is gravel. And so the problem is that although people can get into the immediate grandstand when they hit that paved area, I shouldn't use the word hit, when they enter through the paved area, they can't get down to the other facilities. For example, the washrooms are off the gravel. You can't access the grandstands on the west side or even on the west end of the main grandstand. You can't access the beer garden. And there's a lot of facilities that are down on that end and more as we're continuing to develop the facility to which these people can't access, or if they can, it's very difficult for them. So we've engaged an advocate in town, Sandy Laberman, who is quite familiar with accessibility issues, accessibility and inclusion. And we've been talking to her, she's been talking to groups. And our plan is to, and we've had a contractor out there as well to tell us what it would cost to pave the entire inner concourse area between the entrance and the grandstands and the west side. And we're looking at a cost of approximately $35,000, which would include the paving, site preparation, and so on. I dare say that another aspect of it is we do have ramps going up into the grandstand instead of just stairways, but those ramps are old and they really need to be redone. So I expect the budget's going to exceed $35,000 once we get all the numbers in. The problem is during the winter it's very difficult to get a contractor in to give us specifics. But long and short of it is we're looking at a project that's going to cost us about $35,000. We want to go ahead as soon as we can, and we're asking for $7,500 towards that to make the whole facility more accessible. And I say not just for the rodeo, but for all the events that we're trying to hold there. And I'm happy to take questions, obviously, if I...
Thank you, Peter. Any questions? Councillor Newman?
Yes, obviously you were mentioning that you do have somebody in your organization that's familiar with the outside organizations, but has additional grant funding been considered for this? I know when it comes to accessibility, it's the forefront of many of the government organizations and other organizations to get everybody at a certain space, so I know there's funding available.
That's why we've approached Sandy to get some information, because she's very familiar. Perfect. And she's attended some meetings. There is a group called Accessibility BC who has a year-end budget, manages it, and she tells us that we fall within all the criteria for that. There's the Rick Hansen Foundation, and there's a couple of other organizations to which we're looking as well. But before we approach them formally, we want to have more information on hand. We're really appearing before you on this year's budget simply because we know the money's not going to be dispersed until much later in the year. We want to see if we can get it some of these facilities in place for some of our major events this year.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Anyone else? Any other? Councillor Petrosi?
So how many events are you looking at this year? Anything new coming up?
You're asking me to spill the beans?
Sure.
Yes, we've got a few things. Some are returning. We've got a booking from the Kennel Club, as you've just heard. We've got the Elvis Festival returning. We're trying to increase camping at the grounds. As you probably know, we had a lot of people there during the fires and the floods, and we see a need to look after overflow. We don't want to compete with campgrounds that are available in the Nicola Valley area, but where people are coming in and they don't have a place to go, and also people with that are carrying horses that are on their way somewhere in the province. So we've put in new power posts for that. In fact, we've done a major upgrade that I'll be talking about at some later date, informing the council about that. But we've been involved for the last year and a half at least in doing a major electrical upgrade that's going to allow more events. We're thinking that down the road we hope to maybe put concerts in there. We've improved the sound system significantly. We put something like $25,000 into a new sound system. So I don't have the calendar events in front of me. It is on the web page, I should tell you. But yeah, we've already got something like 6 or 8 bookings for this year.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to
tell you know that we all appreciate the rodeo and the rodeo grounds and the association have for many, many years. So thank you very much for everything you do.
Well, I was hoping we'd get a chance to talk after driving in. But anyway, thanks again. I appreciate it.
I'll just get you to push that button on the mic there. Julie, you've already answered our questions for the small scale meet. Thank you very much. In kind, Community Futures Development Corporation of Nicola Valley. Anybody here from Community Futures? No. No. Merritt Dance Society. Herman. Or, oh, is that, sorry.
Hi, I'm Tony Stewart. I'm the president of the Merritt Dance Society. I don't really have anything prepared for you. I thought I was just going to be here to answer questions. So all we're looking for is support for rental of the auditorium and the rooms across the hall for change rooms and any equipment rentals we might need, like microphone and things like that. The rest of the costs we're willing to fundraise and cover ourselves.
Thank you. And I'm assuming this is for the country Christmas year-end thing, or is this?
No, it's for June.
Oh,
we have we have a year-end recital usually for the families, but we've been opening up. The last one we did last June, we opened up to the public to come view as well. It's usually metal tests that they do locally in studio. It's nothing formal, and then they sometimes have their competition numbers that they redo for people in the public to be able to see, because most of you don't get to the competition venues to see that, so that's all it's for.
Thank you. Okay. Questions, anyone? No questions. Thank you,
right.
Tony.
Thanks for your time.
I appreciate it. Merritt Otter Swim Club. Nobody here. Okay. And that's everyone. Except for the two extraordinaries. So we do have a motion on the floor, and that is to approve the recommendations. I'm not sure how council is at this point with hearing everything that they've heard. Mr. Laus, is it possible to move the ones that we're comfortable with and red flag the ones that we'd like more information on, or is it an idea that we do the whole thing all at once? I'm just curious. Sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. It is certainly possible for you to take ones that you're happy approving at this point and move them forward. That said, I do know that would be a little more complicated for minute keeping, although certainly viable. I'm not sure how it would work for the finance department, the additional complexity. Mr. Thompson's shrugging. It seems that I think that's a viable option if there are ones that you feel comfortable pushing forward tonight, and then looking at more information on other ones that you might not want to explicitly reject at this point, but are not yet prepared to support.
Okay, thank you. So I guess we do have a motion on the floor. I guess I'm looking at what council would like to do. Would we like to just vote on this and vote which way we'd like to, and then re-motion, or what would we like to do? Councillor Charney.
Well, I need more information on at least 3 of these. I would like to look at the costs and the breakdown of it, and I have no problem giving money, but the amount I am unsure about. So I would like to further investigate some.
Councillor Richard.
I was thinking if we were to amend the motion to next meeting to make the decision on the approvals, because not.
Would you like to make that amendment?
Yes, I would like to make it a motion to amend the decision.
Councillor Rose? Oh, sorry, Mr. Rose.
Please don't delay.
Yes, sorry.
Your Worship, Section 15 of the procedure bylaw, procedural motions not open to debate and must be voted on immediately. I know you said you didn't want to use the dreaded D word, but I think this is one of these situations where it might be helpful if that is the will of council. So 15C would be to defer, a vote to defer an item to a later specified date. So it would be, if you so wished, you could move to defer this item to the January 24th meeting, in which case you would, if that was seconded, you would need to vote on that immediately. And then we would bring back all the information and make sure that you have absolutely all of these linked files available in your agenda before that meeting date.
So that would override the current motion we have on the floor. Okay, so is that your motion to defer?
Defer to the January 24th.
Second?
Yeah.
Call the question? No. I guess we're deferring, so.
If that was all in favor, Your Worship?
Yes. Opposed, sorry, my mistake. So just to everybody out in the crowd, I appreciate you coming. It's just that we just need a little bit more information. A lot of us haven't done this in a while, and some of us are new, so we do have some questions. But thank you for your input. I do appreciate it. Thank you very much. So that is deferred. Uh, 9.5, transit fleet expansion proposal. Mr. Thompson, you're up.
Thank you, Your Honor. Merritt's fleet of 3 vehicles is too few to maintain a consistent, operationally reliable service, and it is recommended that we expand to 4 vehicles. And we have had many issues with maintenance and lack of availability over the past year with the current fleet of 3 vehicles. The buses are aging, and per BC Transit, they're being overused and wearing out quicker than they should. One bus was caught in the flood of November 2021 and has been constantly in for maintenance. And so BC Transit has replaced the flood-impacted bus and is recommending that we use 4 vehicles in rotation for our local bus routes. We have also added additional bus stops to the routes, and this requires additional wear and tear on the vehicles. And as per the attached letter from BC Transit, they recommended an additional bus for Merritt at an additional cost of $35,822 for a total proposed 4-vehicle fleet cost of $191,200. As per the attached letter from BC Transit, they're recommending that we add a 4th bus to our fleet, and this should help in our vehicle rotation to lessen the maintenance downtime. If we do not add to the fleet, we will incur more downtime and cancellation of service on our bus routes due to the maintenance issues. Also, if we do not accept the proposed 4th bus, we'll incur higher maintenance costs on the existing 3 buses due to higher utilization. In case you're not aware, we had many days this past spring and summer and fall where the buses were down for maintenance. We had, I think there was 2 days, all 3 buses were down. And so there was no bus service on those days. And so I went after BC Transit and said, this is not acceptable, and which is where we've had the conversation. We placed the flood-impacted bus, as well as we took a look at the utilization on the buses, and really we needed to be a 4-bus operation in Merritt. And so that's why the recommendation has come forward to do the 4 buses.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. So the recommendation is that council accept the proposal to expand the bus fleet to 4 vehicles at an additional cost of $35,822, and that council moves the acting director of finance and IT sign the letter of acceptance with BC Transit. Do I have a mover on that? Councillor Etchart, Councillor Egan. On the floor, questions? Councillor Charney.
Do you have a breakdown of the revenue versus expenses for our transit system?
No, not with me.
Can you give us a, is it
We subsidize the transit system.
to the amount of?
I think it's about half of what the total cost is.
So what I'm trying to get at is, are the buses utilized efficiently, or are we having empty buses going around and around?
No, when we had, BC Transit was up here in October, and with 2 of their, the manager and her assistant, and they rode the buses, and they said, your buses are utilized more than I've seen in a lot of other communities.
Councillor Charney, when we have been down at UBCM over the years, we're always used as an example of how transit is supposed to work. Our hours are, and you can see on this page here, how far we are ahead of everybody else in hours per, and we're always used as the example of a transit system that actually works and is used. I think we're looking at 85,000 total rides a year for a town this size. So we always get our kudos at UBCM every time there's a transit meeting and there's one of us sitting in the crowd. They always point out how well our system is used. So it is super utilized. It really is. So, any other questions? Councillor Hogan?
I just want to mention that based on the information provided, it is clear the need of this 4th bus. I'm just a little uncomfortable, approving something when we have not got to the budget part, so we don't know how much money it's there. We don't know where the money is going to go. So that's the only part that I'm concerned, right? So if you tell me, okay, yes, we have the money to to move forward with this one, then I would be I will be a little bit more comfortable. But we have not got to the discussion of the budget, and that's the fact.
Thank you. You remind me of my dad. Don't buy that. Councillor Egan?
I was just going to say, after the tours that we were taking, all I keep thinking of, we need a couple new fire trucks, and we need more everything. That's so expensive.
Welcome to the night.
Yeah, I know.
Councillor Petrosi?
Anyway, I really didn't think there were that many riders on our buses. I'm usually on the road early in the morning, and I don't see that many riders on our buses, but obviously must be all day constant. So is that 191,000, does that cover the cost of maintenance, yearly maintenance on these buses? That's covers.
The maintenance.
If you look on the page from BC Transit, it gives the cost difference between the 3-vehicle fleet, the 4-vehicle fleet, cost difference. So when we look at the lease fee, it's another 18,000. Maintenance cost is 10,000. Fuel cost 4,000. Insurance 2,000 for a total of 35,000.
Were they thinking of maybe possibly looking at electric or hybrid of some sort down the road, or?
They're constantly looking at improving the efficiency, also looking at electric, compressed natural gas, and what's the other one? They're constantly looking at what it's utilizing for fuel and what they can do to improve the air quality. So those are proposals that are in the works because they have over 1,000 buses in the provincial fleet. So they're looking at utilizing where best to utilize these things. And as they come up for renewal, they're looking at going to more efficient and more green buses as they move forward.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Richard?
I think it's inevitable that if we're looking at growth, there's a lot of people who don't have vehicles. We have different housing all over town. I actually see a number of people walking and waiting at the bus stops in the morning when I go into work. There's one near my house. When it's down, you see a lot of comments on the grapevine. For those of us on the grapevine, or that see some of the comments, even though we try and hide from them, because most of the times there's no good comments on there, but about the city. The bus is, we maybe don't notice if we don't use it every day, but I know that there's a number of people I see on average at 8:20 in the morning, 3 people waiting at the bus stop near downtown. And it's used quite a bit in the morning. A lot of people going to NVIT, different things. So I think it's important that we look at this. 35,000 in the budget is an increase, but not as big as most of the things that we're going to see. So I think it's important to consider.
Any other? Councillor Newman?
Yeah, just with the increase of another bus, is there any consideration to route changes or a review of what's currently in place? I mean, maybe there are different, if we have an extra bus, there could be additional runs that might be considered.
Mr. Thompson?
As I mentioned earlier, there's 3 new bus stops that were added just in the last 2 months because we added the 4th bus in with the expectation that we would get approval for it. But at the same time, we've added new bus stops, and they've looked at reconfiguring the routes when that happens. So,
what about
Yep. Sorry, no, and yeah, that would just be my concern. And the extra bus stops is great. It's just sometimes you often wonder about the areas that aren't necessarily accessible by bus that people still have to walk into to get to a certain stop. Just a thought.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I just want to add that.
Councillor Egan?
Yes, thank you. I just want to add that when my brother was alive, he was quadriplegic and he used the bus all the time. And there's all kinds of disabled people that use it all the time. So it's a very, very positive service.
And I just want to take a moment to thank Transit for adding the 3 new routes. But I really want to thank the Nicola Meadows people that saw a need came to mayor and council, and mayor and council ran with what they were after, and Lori to help us hit the right numbers and right people. And the old squeaky wheel gets the grease is, so if you're interested in a situation where you'd like the bus coming to your area, you need to speak out. So we can't just figure out where it is. So a big slap on the back to all of the residents at Nicola Meadows, because they sure needed that. So, any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Notices of motion. No notices of motion. Reports from council. Who's got some reports? Who wants to go first? Anyone? Hit your light. Councillor.
Well, I just spent off the last 2 days and driving around the flood zones, and I was just noticing that more homes going up for sale that it just appears people are wanting to walk away from. I don't know if you've noticed that or not. And then some homes people are just getting into now. You know, they've got dumpsters out and just getting into them now. And we're talking 15 months later. And I've just been noticing things like that around town. So I don't know if any of you have, but what else? The Diamond Vale Mobile Home Park, I guess that's still at a bit of a standstill. I guess we're still waiting on.
It's moving forward. Sean was here. Trailers will start be coming in soon. Most people will be in by February.
Right. It's just, I took a drive down there. It doesn't look like there's much for like prep for them when they come. So I don't know if they do it at the same time.
They do it at the same. They do it at the same time.
Okay. December during the cold months, I actually visited Endeavor to Be Better during the cold months, and I just stopped by there a couple of days ago and. Talking to one of the people there, and they mentioned they had quite a few people actually signing in for meals, and it's half now that the weather's warmer, so they're kind of wondering where these people are going, but definitely the colder weather, a lot of people are actually utilizing that, so that was pretty interesting. And just want to mention the December 24th bus crash. Thanks for all the updates on that, and thanks to emergency services and first responders. So it was quite a hard time.
Yes, it was. It was very hard. Thank you, Councillor Charney.
I also went to Endeavor to Be Better, and they said I was the second counselor to be there, so now I know who was the first counselor. I've set up 2 meetings for the seniors, working with Marlene Jones at Community Policing. One meeting will be February 10th, and it will be on SEPTED. The other meeting will be March 10, and it will be Scams and Frauds. It will be at the Senior Center, and I have obviously already contacted the Senior Center and their members. I've contacted the CWL, the Sikh Temple, and the Retired Teachers Association. So I'm slowly trying to get seniors, into these learning sessions. I also visited the resident at 2307 Clapperton that sent in a letter to the council with regards to drainage. So she showed me around and explained her situation, so it was a little clearer for me what she was dealing with. And that's it.
Thank you. Anyone else? For me, real quick, I met with Nicola Valley Tourism. I met with Brad Bushell from Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure, who gave me a crash course on what they do and who to contact. Merritt Food Bank, that was a bad choice of words. Nicola Valley Rodeo and Aspen Planers the other day as well. So, anyone else have anything else? Information items. The SILGA call for nominations 2000. Anybody want to talk about any of the information items? Councillor Newman?
Yeah, actually, I'd like to nominate somebody for the seat in SILGA, and that would be Councillor Etchard.
Councillor Etchard, you've been blindsided. How do you feel? Okay, there we go. Nomination, Councillor Etchard. Speak now.
SILGA is definitely where we have to go with any of our motions, and an important time for us to get to a chance to speak. And I know seeing the small business, the small scale meat producers association, they had a big presentation the last time at SILGA about the importance of food security, and so they do have some pretty interesting topics that come up there. And so yeah, I think it's good to have representation from Merritt, because one thing that I noticed about the SILGA board was that a lot of the people ended up being from Kelowna and maybe
Salmon
Arm,
yeah,
and less from the Kamloops, Lillooet, Merritt, Logan Lake type area. So it's nice to have a mixed board. So sure, go for it. Why not?
Sure. I have to be, thank you for the nomination, and thank you for the acceptance. I have to be honest, when we had Councillor Croker on it, it was nice to have a representation from this area on it. And he actually became the president at some point in time. So anyone else have anything on the information items? Anybody else want to get blindsided? Councillor Egan?
I was approached by mail. Bruce Gilmore sent me, and for those of you who don't know who Bruce Gilmore is, he's was blinded in a car accident about 40 years ago, and he's very, very involved with disability organizations. He works at the airport, and he's met somebody who sent me a letter, and I meant to bring it tonight, so I would just like to have it said that I will bring it to the next meeting. I'll probably give you all a copy of the letter, but it has to do with making everything more accessible in town.
Thank you. Yes, and I do remember Bruce. I remember the night of the accident. Actually, I was there, so it was a terrible night. This brings us to the close of the meeting. Anything else before we close? I'll call the meeting closed. Thank you very much. Good night, everyone.